It's 4 o'clock on a Monday. You know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woohoo! We are back. We are live, and we are here today with my dear friend Ronan Chris Murphy.
And I'm so underdressed.
Oh yeah, I'm a little overdressed. I have to go to a wedding after the show today. All right, let me make sure that we are in fact broadcasting. You guys seeing us out there? Sweet yes.
Sweet tie, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not like all the way up there. But yeah, right after this, man, I am going to a wedding. Anyway, I'm delighted that my first live show in a while, that we've got Ronan here because he's just like a big hit at the Road Rally every year. We always get great response when he's on the big show here. And I hope you guys behaved yourselves while I was out of town. Yeah, it's good to be back. Good to see your virtual faces anyway. John Pearson, Peter Rahill, Alan Hall, Riney Bear, Dean Turner, Chris Anderson, Heidi, Chris Freeman, Stuart McClellan, Jesse J. Peck, Piano, Laura, Andre. I saw you're coming to the rally this year. Yay. Okay. Anyway, so we are here. And Ronan and I are going to talk about creating a great studio space in your home, studio monitor placement, maybe some brand recommendations, although he gets very esoteric stuff that most of us will never, ever buy. Backing up your files in case of disaster, and rumor has it he's had one recently. What type of insurance you should have for your gear, and how a giant tree made Ronan a world-class expert on the last two bullet points, which are insurance and backing up. And then towards the end of the show, we're actually going to do some live Q&A. So that's the roadmap for today. Should we... Yeah, let's start with the tree. You have a tree house.
Yes, I have.
So
I have two houses now. Right. I started with one. I have two now.
So, have you had any giant trees fall in your home? Here, for those of you who don't know, and I know that many of you do. And by the way, I want to say thank you, and I'm sure Ronan does as well.
Absolutely.
So many of you contributed to the GoFundMe thing, and I literally sent out that email and watched the numbers like almost double overnight. So yeah. You guys are pretty awesome. Hopefully we will never have to help you rebuild a house after a tree falls on it. But this, whoops, there we go. That's what it looked like when it was alive and functional. Beautiful. Another shot of the studio.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, you know what? I wasn't going live with those. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, that's what it looked like. And another shot of what it used to look like.
And then
this happened. Wow. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And just to give you a little perspective on how big that tree was, there you go. Wow. Yeah. Almost right down the middle.
Yeah, and it went over. The tree was big enough. It went through my house, across the vacant lot next to us, and into the house, like 5 feet from hitting the house beyond that. So it was about a 160-foot tree.
I mean, I've got a couple of 50-foot pine trees in our backyard. I can't even imagine something 3 times as large. So you have toothpicks for life.
Exactly, but no, it was obviously a pretty dramatic thing. I was in the house. People are like, "Oh, thank God you weren't in there." I'm like, I was in there. I was brushing my teeth. So, but had it happened literally like 4 minutes before that night, this happened at like 1 a.m. Kind of everywhere I was before that got completely clobbered by the tree. And but thankfully I was back brushing my teeth in a part of the house that didn't cave in, because the whole front of the house you can sort of see it just caved in. But no, I got really lucky. But
did you hear like a cracking sound? Did you have any warning, or was your first warning when it hit?
No. Well, the crazy thing was people thought, oh, it must have been such a huge loud thing. But really, what happened was we'd had. Like, we're like in the mountains north of Los Angeles. Yeah. And we'd had about 5 feet of snow on our property that week. And then we had 2 warm days with rain and, above freezing temperatures. And then we had 65-mile-an-hour winds. So we had this kind of greatest hits collection. Wow. But no, the thing was, I was brushing my teeth, and we have a huge CD collection and a couple thousand CDs. And I thought I heard one of those fall over. And I brushed my teeth, and I thought, oh, crap. What a pain in the neck, because they're all alphabetized. It's going to take us more than a day to put those back together. And then I just started hearing. So I think what happened was it came down and just sort of flopped onto the house.
Yeah.
And then the weight of it just went through, which is great, because I probably would have been dead if it went down fast, because it would have blown out the framing and everything of the house. Wow. But it came down just this crunching sound, and it was kind of crazy. But the community, the support we got from the community was amazing. So many people from Taxi kind of reached out with both kind of good wishes and the GoFundMe. You know, it was amazing because, you know, the great thing, and I don't mind being public about this because people gave us real dollars. So, but, you know, with the insurance, you know, there's parts of it were covered, but just in the weird insurance that we had in this kind of high risk area, tree removal and eventual demolition of the house and all that kind of stuff, not covered by any of it.
If you don't mind me asking, how much does it cost to remove a 160-foot tree?
About $6,500.
Wow.
And then there's going to be tens of thousands of dollars on the other stuff. So it was one of those things where, you know, just people kind of stepped up. It was amazing. Like the support we got was just out of this world.
You're really well liked, in case you haven't heard. I mean, I've never heard anybody say anything.
If I had any doubts, but no, it was amazing. Like again, so many people from that become like friends and stuff from the taxi community, and even just so many people like, oh man, we've never really met, but you know, I've seen you do your thing at Taxi, and it really helped me a lot. So here's $10 to help you back, and that all of those things just made such a huge impact. Because again, this is a pretty crappy thing to happen. But you know, the kind of support that we got from the taxi community and some other communities we're part of was just really turned this thing from like, oh my God, this is absolute devastation to, we got work to do. You know, it's that kind of support really transformed it from being just absolutely devastating to, we got crap to deal with. All right, everybody's got crap to deal with. Here's ours. So we're so grateful.
Like we were talking about, you know, before we started the show, you're looking at a couple of years to get back to normal.
Yeah.
I guess the good part is little excitement, you know, building something new.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. You're going to be building a new studio from scratch. And just so you know, they're actually renting another place that's nearby from a neighbor who had just mentioned to Ronan, gee, I wish I could rent my place to somebody, but it would have to be somebody I know because there's some personal stuff in here. So you're building a new studio from scratch. You're building an interim studio in the place you're renting.
Yes.
So I know you loved your old room.
Yes. I mean, we bought that building because of that room.
So were there things, how many years did you have that studio set up?
Just over 6 years.
So were there things that you discovered that you thought, oh man, I wish I'd done it like this, but now it's done and it's a pain in the butt and I'd have to go back and tweak a little? Or was it like...
It was a remarkable room. It really was.
So you didn't have any stuff like, well, I get a chance to do it better this time?
Yeah, it was a remarkable room.
Okay.
And again, luckily we're in a good situation now. You know, it's working out really well. But again, we bought that. Like literally, we've been looking at different places all over the country, potentially to buy a little bit outside of LA.
Yeah. And
I remember on Zillow or something, I saw that room, and I remember showing it to Liz going, this place, studio. Because it was amazing because it had no first reflection zones. Because it was called a gambrel house, and you can sort of see it in the photo, but it's sort of like somewhere between a regular house and an A-frame.
Yeah.
So pretty much sound goes out from the speakers, disperses down into the floors, and even angle there. It was, I think, 37 feet to the back wall, and it was essentially kind of a loft. So there's a big hole in the middle. So there was so much room for low end to dissipate.
Wow.
And, you know, I actually owned a whole bunch of acoustic treatments, and, you know, I could get some custom built, but I went in and set up speakers and everything, and it was like, it's done.
Yeah.
So I actually had acoustic panels and stuff in storage. So, but it's like one of those things like, there's nothing to do here. And almost thought, well, God, I should put something up because people will think this high-end mastering engineer didn't even bother to treat his room, but it just didn't need it.
I want to go back and look at the room for a minute.
Yeah. So the next one is really the one that I'll show you.
All right.
Yeah, so I had, from my listening position, like 32 feet to the back room. Over on the left-hand side, you can see the big stairwell down there.
Right.
And no first reflection zone. So it was pretty remarkable.
Wow.
The new room...
What's that roof style? Gimbal?
Gambrel. Gambrel.
Gambrol?
E-L.
Yeah. Gambrel.
And
Wow.
up in that area, they were almost like a kit house. So you see a ton of them up. It's in a town called Pine Mountain Club, about 90 minutes northwest of here. But and you see a bunch of those around. But I essentially saw that room on Zillow. It said,
I'll take it.
Yeah, this will be an amazing studio.
And what kind of monitors are those big, giant? They're mastering monitors.
Yes. So they were from a company called FAR, Fundamental Acoustic Research, out of Belgium. So those were custom made. The company and the owner are both dead. Tiny little company that's
was he
ceased
squished
to
under
exist.
the tree?
Yeah, exactly.
Did they got destroyed?
Well, they didn't totally get destroyed, but the exposure to elements, and those each are like over 300 pounds each.
Yeah.
And all access to them got destroyed. So we couldn't. So basically, there's huge hole in the middle and rain and stuff coming down. We literally, to get those out, would have had to like bring in backhoes and stuff.
Right.
And
so basically, they looked intact, but they would have not been functional.
Yeah, and because they basically, in best of conditions, both times they were moved to different studios, were damaged by professional moving crews, moving them in good scenarios now. Because once the tree came down, there was no stair access, so everything I was able to save, actually, some went out that hole that you see there. That's how a bunch of the gear went out, and also out another window and off a back deck. So yeah, there was no stair access. So everything, and actually God bless everyone who helped, but we some of the gear kind of survived the tree, but not necessarily the helpful neighbors who helped move it. So there was, again, God bless them all, but yeah, some of the gear actually got damaged, getting it out, and things like that. So it's all good. But
and your clothes and your life and your photos. I mean, you've never mentioned that because you're so addicted to your studio stuff. But
exactly.
It's your life. I mean, I remember during the Northridge earthquake, our apartment got destroyed. It got red tagged, and we had to move out. Mm-hmm. And the only thing we could salvage was sheets, towels, T-shirts, and underwear. If it was hard, it was crushed and destroyed.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how upsetting that is to have your world, like 1 minute you got it and the next minute you don't.
So we were lucky because where most of our clothes are, that was saved. A few other things. So basically, some stuff in the very back of the house we saved, but other stuff, the kitchen, where we stored a lot of music stuff, my keyboard collection gone, things like that. But we. Did
you have a B3?
No. I had. You can sort of see there's a Lowry organ in there, and that next. So I had the big thing of geared. Yeah, you can see an organ up there, but what you can't see is that there's a. You can. I was in that chair earlier in the evening, but
so in the
my Fender
lower left quadrant, there's a chair. I can see it.
But my Fender, of all the gear that I lost, I had a beautiful Fender Rhodes 88 key suitcase model from the 70s, gorgeous, and that took a direct hit. But but one of the things that I kind of want to talk about, because it's super important to me and just can transform people's lives, is the things that made me not freak out. Obviously, this happened at 1 a.m. I went and banged on my neighbor's door and they let me in. And I'm thinking they're going, my whole life is different. From this point forward, my whole life is transformed. I thought we'd lost everything in the house.
You know what? On a material level, yes. And on an emotional level, yes. But, you didn't lose a limb. You didn't lose your life. You didn't lose Liz. Thank God.
Absolutely.
But all things considered.
The two things that really kind of helped was, one, the first thing is thank God I'm an obsessive cloner of hard drives. Right. And, it's one of those things where...
Good band name, by the way. Exactly. The Obsessive Cloners.
Exactly. But this, and if people joining in today take nothing away from today, clone your hard drives, and clone your hard drives. It's literally transformative of my life, because I'm sitting there just thinking, okay, my house just got destroyed. I've just lost all of this. But I've got so many hard drives. I've got clients' projects from the last 20 years. I've got family photos. I've got contracts. I've got, business negotiations, all of this. And I'm like, But for me, the one thing that made this like, okay, we'll get through this is that I clone and I keep offsite drives.
Yeah.
So, I've got, I've got a place over in Italy, and I've got a few big hard drives there that have my most important client files. We've got most important photos and personal business stuff.
So do you bring a drive with you over there and then dump it on the drive there and then bring the other one back to the States after you've done the transfer?
I mean, I use a program called Carbon Copy Cloner.
Right.
And so like my main client drive, I can bring a clone of that, which of course I have multiple clones here in California. So I can bring that over, one of those over, even just the clone to Italy when I go there in a month or so, and then clone that back to my Italian copy and then bring it back. And I also just buy big drives, and I've got a friend who lives outside of Chicago, and I'll, hey, can I have like this much space in one of your closets?
Yeah.
And down in his basement. So I hadn't done...
I feel like I have to make a Hillary Clinton joke, but I won't.
Not servers, just the drives. So, but that thing of having those offsite things, because I hadn't created an offsite clone since I'd gotten back from Italy, which was maybe a little over a month ago before.
Right, before the incident.
In worst case scenario, I was out like a month or 5 weeks of my life.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's ways to
figure that out. How long did it take you to have that realization? Like from the moment that the house got squished and you went and knocked on your neighbor's door.
It was one of the first things I'm thinking about.
Like literally in the first few minutes?
Yeah, because, I mean, not only is data stuff like old family photos that I've scanned and all of that, but data is my client's work. You know, it's that sort of thing. Hey, we've been working on this stuff off and on for a few months now or something like that. And it's heartbreaking to me how many people I see that are like, oh man, my hard drive just died, and I've been working on my album for the last year and a half.
I mean, and you
dead.
can buy a 2 terabyte drive now for like $60.
Yes,
absolutely.
I mean,
I could understand back when they were $1,000, $2,000, they were the size of a shoebox and they weighed 12 pounds. You could, that was a little inconvenient. But yeah, you can buy something now that's like the size of your phone. For
literally.
Yeah, for $50, $60, it's 2 terabytes.
And the really important thing is, you can just do straight copies, but there's other ways to do it, Apple Time Machine and different ways. But I use something called Carbon Copy Cloner. So like if I've done some important work and I want to update my clone, 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's not like the old days where you have to recopy the whole thing. And
right. It's just looking, it's smart cloning.
Yeah. And when I'm working on something, like if I'm working on a big video game or a big film score, and we've got like union musicians out there, it's sort of like, okay, it's union break for 5 minutes. I'm cloning. Yeah. I'm cloning in that union break because hard drives die. That's just what they do. They will all die. And if I've done that,
you get union musicians up where you live.
Not at my place, but no, if I'm working in the village or something like that, it's so critical, and it's one of those things where it's a bummer to go and paying another $100 to get some more hard drives, but the peace of mind that comes with that is just. It cannot be overstated. Again, just from anything from like the scanned photos of your grandparents that people lose those memories. They don't have the same commercial value of my client's project that we've been working on. But, that was the one photos we had of my grandparents. Yeah.
Potentially lawsuits.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you didn't make best effort to protect that stuff
absolutely.
And it got wiped, you'd be liable.
Yeah, and luckily for me, I had just done some cloning and I actually had some clones in the front, like my main operating system. I had some in the front of the house and some in the back. Yeah. And the ones in the back of the house survived. The ones in the front were destroyed. So I'd even had different places in the house, and that was just dumb luck. That wasn't intentionally that I'd spread them out. Yeah. That was dumb luck. But again,
luck can work in your favor.
And the other thing that sort of like gave me some relief is, as a pro, I've got pretty good investments into my audio equipment.
Right.
Everything from guitars and keyboards to mic preamps and mics. And one of the mistakes that a lot of people make were like mine. So the place we technically still own it, but the whole top floor was the studio.
Now you just own a slab.
Now we own 2 of them, actually. Now we own 2 houses. But the whole top floor was my studio. Yeah. The whole bottom floor was residence. And so we owned the building, so we had a homeowner's policy, but a lot of people have a homeowner's policy or a renter policy, and they think, oh, it's good. I've got all these keyboards. I've got this, cool sample library and keyboard I do for my taxi listings. But you need to be super careful about your insurance, because most homeowners or renters policies will not cover professional tools. I mean, the same thing is, for me, it's guitars and microamps.
What about if it's a hobbyist tool? What about if you've got...
A hobby, generally, yes.
But with you, they could tell it was more than a hobby.
Yeah, but, and it'd be the same for a sewing machine. If I had a business where I sewed people's curtains or something,
right,
that's professional equipment. And most homeowners or renter policies do not cover professional business equipment.
Because they want you to buy a business insurance
policy. And so one of the things, too, that I was like... Oh, okay. So I've got, I made some mistakes with my policy in terms of updating it and stuff, but I've got like $80,000 worth of stuff.
What was the most expensive single thing that you lost? And don't cry on the show, didn't it?
Well, those speakers.
Yeah.
Those speakers, yeah. So, and one of the things, and this is the bummer, and I'm going to be upfront and honest, so I hope people can lose from my mistakes. One of the things with your professional equipment insurance, and truth is, again, if you do sewing or whatever, think what we're talking about applies to that too.
Yeah.
Or your painting tools. But one of the really important things that I didn't do is, my thing would come up for renewal, and I've been paying it for 20-something years.
I know where you're going with this.
Not watching to see what the market does.
Right.
So again, I've mentioned before, I had this beautiful Fender Rhodes, 88 key power amp, with the speakers, the whole deal.
Value?
And when I first did it, and those are very cyclical kind of things. And when I first did it, they're going for like $1,200 on the used market. Let me put $1,200. They're going for like $6,000 on the used market now, because it's a volatile market. So a lot of even cool like digital outboard and stuff like that, really volatile markets. And so
what was the most? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I hadn't really updated that. I'm like, do you want to renew? Yeah, just whatever. You've got the list.
Right.
Versus every year coming around going, okay, let's see if that's gone up or down. Even some stuff like, some digital gears, like, wow, that's worth like 3 cents now. No reason to keep that insured for $600 and pay that premium. But that was a few things. There was a few things that, the market had changed significantly since I did the original numbers. So, it's the difference of I lost like $5,000 from one keyboard because I was a dummy and didn't do.
What was your most cherished microphone that you lost? Tell me you didn't have like a 251 from 1968.
No. Well, thankfully, the one that got beat up pretty bad. Didn't lose it, but it's because a lot of stuff too got beat up.
Right.
But a Perlman TM1, which is a kind of modern build of a U47.
Yeah.
And that took a beating, but thankfully Perlman Microphones, who's the guy, Dave Perlman.
Yeah.
He took it and he kind of totally refurbished it for me.
He was at the road rally?
Oh, he was. Yes, yeah. I ran into him. Dave is amazing. And,
I met him for a minute. I got to hang out with that guy.
I love his mics. And he totally took care of it and rebuilt it and sent it back new and gorgeous. So that, and again, I'm fanatical about Shure KSM32s, even though they're not expensive. One of them I lost. One, depending on where things were in the studio. Right. Some were like, oh, that's fine. Oh, that's completely destroyed.
How about guitars or amps?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've had a Mesa Boogie 412 for years. It's been like my main amp for studio for 25, 30 years. Direct hit. That thing. Oh, man. If you go in the kitchen and look, you can sort of see its feet coming down through there. But I had my guitars got pretty beat up. But
did they get affected by the weather? Post crash.
Well, where I lost a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of it we'll even know. But the roof came in, and then it was raining and snowing.
Right.
So, I had a bunch of guitar pedals and stuff out that just got rained and snowed on. So a bunch of my gear got rained and snowed on. I had a nice Royer mic. Royer again fixed it up really nice. So a bunch of that stuff. And weather ended up really, even some of it. Once the house gets pulled apart, could probably even go and grab some stuff. But it's all just been exposed to rain and snow for so long that it'll all be goners.
And now they've probably got raccoons living in speaker cabinets
Yeah,
and stuff.
but again, we did have bears did take over the house.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
there was a shot, which I didn't put load in the show today,
Yeah.
but there was a shot with a bear on top of the tree, looking for food in the house.
But yeah, the bears came in and they actually started to kind of take that over as a hangout. So we actually had to board up part of the house to keep the bears out because they were getting really comfortable. Like they had a nice shelter with food and stuff.
Yeah.
So yes.
They were jamming.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the band? There was
There's that one in Disney.
Right.
Yes. My brother sent a joke about that. I've forgotten their name, but yes.
Whatever. Yeah.
So yes.
Okay, so it's funny. Every year at the Road Rally, we've got Music Pro Insurance there, and they are not sponsoring this. I'm not plugging it because they paid anything, but I wonder how many people take this stuff seriously, and most people probably think, like I've been guilty of in my lifetime, which is statistically, what are the odds that you're ever going to need it? But from what I understand, I was talking to the lady that basically is like the GM of Music Pro, and she said people are often shocked when they find out how inexpensive it is.
Yeah.
And for the one time you need it, being case in point sitting right next to me.
And here's the part for me, and I assume they're the same because I actually, mine's coming up, and I looked at Music Pro, and I've been with another company, but Music Pro actually just looked like they're actually better, like price wise.
Right.
So I'm actually going to do some more comparisons. But what I had was called an inland marine policy. Super important for pro musicians, and I would imagine Music Pro is the same. You can check with them.
Why do they call it inland marine?
Well, basically, if I had a mic preamp and I was on a canoe going up a river in China, and the canoe went over and I lost my mic pre at the bottom of the river.
So basically, it covers anything under any circumstances.
Yes, And again, for a gigging musician, that's the thing. You bring, yes, that's another thing too. Why even if you do happen to have like a homeowners or renter that covers the contents of your house. Well, you pick up your gig and your Fender Twin, you go out and play a club, and then somebody steals your stuff.
Yeah, we all know that guy who unloaded the van, turned around to light a cigarette, and came back and the guitar is gone.
Yeah, so a good professional equipment policy will do that. And that's the thing too, where I do a lot of international work where I'm all of a sudden I've got a rack with $2,000 mic preamps and stuff in there, and it's even things like I remember once I was looking out a window, I had a rack full of like tube gear and stuff like that, and I just saw them bringing the things and literally just throwing it in the air and dropping it. It's like, why exert
loading it onto the plane?
Why exert the effort to throw it in the air and have it drop? But again, the thing that made
because they're a-holes, that's why.
and the thing that made me go, okay, I have this covered under a professional equipment policy. So if that is, of course, we'd go after the airline, but it's that thing where I know I've got that covered because I have this policy that covers my professional tools, throughout the world. And I think that's really important, even whether...
Would they even cover, and you may not know this about the policy, but let's say you were going to Spain to make a record and you were shipping a rack and the rack got lost or destroyed in transit. Would they also not cover just the replacement, but a rental while you get to your destination? Because that would be important.
I'd call Music Pro and ask them that question because I don't want to speak for what their policies are. So yeah, I actually don't know that. So
I will introduce you to the lady who runs Music Pro. You guys should do a little like a class at the Road Rally.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Because this is important stuff.
Because this sounds boring. I know it's more fun to talk about how to make a snare drum go boom or whatever. But, this whole business about, and it's not, and I've been into this before, disaster struck, but this whole business about like cloning and having insurance and stuff is just so vital because it's heartbreating how many people I've seen like lose like a year of their life or 2 years of their life. And
that's somewhat common. A tree falling on your house, not as common. So in the photos, I'm going to go back to the photos for a minute. You had, wrong photo, these big, beautiful monitors that cost a fortune. They're like half the size of a pickup truck.
Yep.
So you do mastering and you do mixing and occasionally even recording.
Yes.
How is it that you've been able to build a room that serves all of those use cases, all that functionality in one room? Because I've known mastering engineers.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing to build a mastering room.
Yeah.
So how did you accomplish the goal of building a room where you can master stuff and mix in there as well? And I can't even see, what monitors did you use for like NS10s?
There's NS10s there.
And what do you mix on?
Well, mostly the NS10s.
Okay.
And so part of that, and now I'm addressing this too, because I'm in a new space, kind of building out a studio, but I don't own the place, so I'm not going to build walls and tear out walls and stuff like that. But one of the things that allows me to do this is kind of trying to optimize certain spaces. So again, there, and it actually changed a bit, where that old picture doesn't show you. Where I actually had I had the NS10s actually eventually ended up them closer to me. So I'd mix on NS10s in the near field.
Right.
And then, so I've had that hat on. And then when I'm mastering, I would master on the larger mastering speakers. And of course, I'm always bouncing back and forth, but in terms of their primary roles. So I'd have more of a traditional near field NS10 thing, and then switching out to a far field kind of situation. So, and also I ended up actually finding a place to settle. But one of the things too with that original setup is where you could see the NS10s were on the same plane, kind of as the big ones. What I have there, that chair, I work on a rolling table. So I actually would move. So I'd actually move the table up and mix on the NS10s. And then when it's time to master, I would actually go to a different...
probably took out a laser tape measure to make sure that you had.
I just ordered a new laser tape measure from Amazon yesterday, actually. But then, so what I would get is I'd have the advantage of different set of speakers, but also different point in the room.
Right.
Because, and this is something I've been running test tones for the last 2 weeks on stuff to really, dial in the new room.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing where, and this is something.
What do they use now? White noise, pink noise?
Sweeps.
Really?
At least the way I'm doing it, yeah. But this is a really cool thing because, yes, in a perfect world, people doing a taxi listing, whatever, could, hire one guy to mix it, send it out to another gal for mastering and all that. But that's not the real world. So many people have to do their own thing. And one of the really cool things to do is, when you sort of change from your mixing engineer hat to your mastering engineer hat, when you have to do it all yourself, is to look at being able to change your setup. Like, monitor from a different place, going, okay, my chair is here when I'm a mixing engineer. My chair is here when I'm a mastering engineer. And preferably being able to switch to a couple different sets of speakers, and they don't have to be crazy expensive.
Yeah.
You've got your best speakers that you worked on, but then it could be some small Apple computer monitors or some hi-fi or something to give you that different perspective. Because one of the advantages of working with an outside mastering engineer is you've got somebody else listening to your stuff.
Right, because you're too close to it, you lose your objectivity.
Yeah, but even just, the physical objectivity is you mixed it in a room that had its own unique set of problems on speakers that had their own unique set of problems. So now you take it to a mastering engineer, which will hopefully have less of those problems, but he or she will still be working on a set of speakers that have their own unique set of problems in a different room. So having that, because it's pretty amazing. When I'm doing room analysis, I'm doing it on my own now, but also I do it for other consulting clients. But you will find things where all of a sudden, where your listening position, you might have a dip of 30, 40 dB at a certain frequency, just based on the physics of your room. And so you're working here all of a sudden, and then you're thinking your work is brilliant, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. And then why does everybody tell me that the bass is so insane they can't even hear the vocal? It sounds perfect. Right. It's like, well, because maybe in your spot you have a 40 dB cut, dip, natural
Have you
dip
actually
in the room.
seen organic, naturally occurring cuts of that many?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Doesn't surprise me at
I
all.
would have thought that 10 would be like the max.
Oh, God, no. 10 is where you go around and high-five your buddies because your room kicks so much ass.
Wow.
So here's something that I want. Well, I'm going to say I want everybody to do it, but I'm going to tell you to do it, and then you're going to be sad. But it's important to understand. Okay. So whatever DAW you're using, Pro Tools or Logic, whatever, they all have a tone generator or signal generator. And you can generate a sine wave. Just go in and set that for 70 hertz.
Okay.
And just have that go, not crazy loud.
And then move a mic around the room to see.
Just move you around the room.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, just leave the mic stationary, but move your body?
You don't need a mic for this.
Oh.
You're just playing 70,
Okay.
70 hertz out of your speakers and walk around your room or move your chair around and get ready to have your heart broken. And so not only do that, but go around different places, but also stand up, duck down.
Look at the monitors on my desk. I've got a pair of Yamaha, I forget what they're called. They're not NS10s. I've got NS10s behind me. Anyway, but notice I put them up in these stands and I optimize them for my elbows to be right here as if I'm sitting at a console. But if you move 6 inches higher, lower, left, or right, you lose the beauty of the monitor. So I totally believe it.
But anybody who's like in a spare bedroom, that kind of situation, you're going to notice radical stuff. You're going to notice that like that frequency like gets super loud at some points and almost disappears.
Yeah.
So do that. Walk around and hear where those problems are, and then change to a different frequency. Go up to 80 hertz, and then walk around and do the same thing.
You're basically going to create heartbreak for yourself.
Yes.
And you're going to find that there's nowhere in the room that's really good for most frequencies.
Right. But you'll find those where things get really loud or where they get almost disappear.
How do you
different
solve
spots.
that problem?
Acoustic treatment. And that's why a lot of people will say, why so many people who do studio design and consulting go about like, okay, let's talk about acoustic treatment. Let's talk about acoustic treatment. Because what's happening is all those frequencies are sort of bouncing around in the room and blending back with themselves.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's positive, and they're boosting, but sometimes a negative version of itself and a positive version of itself are meeting in the same spot.
And it would all depend on the music you're playing too, the key, and the instrumentation.
And so what acoustic treatment does, it basically absorbs energy. So when the sound comes to the back wall or out to the side walls, it hits this stuff made from fiberglass or other type things, and that energy, when the sound goes through that, loses energy. And then when it comes back and meets itself, all of a sudden there's less interaction. So that's one of the advantages of all that. And that's why a lot of times like the cheap little foam stuff doesn't do anything. It's high frequencies only, but not much else.
Auralex is only good for voiceover booths, and it's not even great for that.
Yeah, and it'll cut down a little slap and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the kind of things is where it can, if you do it right, it can make significant differences. And it's the ideal first solution to fixing acoustic problems, rather than going into digital tools to tune your room digitally. I'm not going to rule those out, but those are sort of your like, okay, we've done as much as we can. And but it's, if you are handy at all with tools, which I'm not. I'm terrible at that kind of stuff. So
that's surprising. I would have thought you would be.
I like to pretend I'm that guy, but no, I was just messed up. I'm really handy at finding buddies who are good at that and going, all right, I got a 6-pack of really good beer and $50 for you if you bring your power tools over.
I need friends like that.
But you can just online look for. A lot of my stuff is made by a company called LA Sound Panels, who actually does great work and stuff.
Is that a guy named Steve Klein?
No, it's a different one. But if you look online for DIY acoustic panels, things with mineral wool or high density fiberglass, if you're handy at all, you can build that stuff for not that much money.
Right.
And transform it. And really, I would have, if somebody has like my room sounds like garbage, and if they have pretty good speakers already, I wouldn't say spend more money on speakers.
Right.
I would say spend money on acoustic treatment, because when you do that, the level of your speakers is just going to jump up, and you wouldn't even notice the benefit of better speakers as much.
Let's talk about bass buildup. The biggest mistake I see, I've seen this for decades now, friends of mine that will go out and buy a pair of NS10s, they're so proud they've got them, and they will put them on a desk up against a wall in a 10 by 12 sheetrock room, and then they wonder why there's so much bottom end. Well, for one thing, you've got a 90-degree angle and you've got underneath the desk is building up bass, and you've got 90-degree corners and parallel walls, parallel ceiling and floor. The bass buildup is ridiculous, and they wonder why when they take their mixes out of the room that it's so bass deficient.
Yeah,
well, it's because you're. No, I can't use that. I can't say it's a family show.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, you're fooling yourself.
Well, but part of it too is something like an NS10 actually even, they roll off about 75, 72 hertz.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like EDM or things like that, or even just regular old rock and roll, they're not telling you what's going on there. So
Right.
you might even go, okay, I got the low end juice, cranking up a low end EQ, and you're thinking, all right, that's groovy, but you're not even hearing that.
Right. It
that,
doesn't
that crazy
right,
thing
doesn't
you
exist in that
So you've
speaker.
got that combination. But one thing too, and again, this is easier once you start using objective analysis tools, like when I'm doing, working on consulting on rooms. It's amazing how much moving your speakers 6 inches
Yeah.
can change it.
So can you give
Like,
us some simple bullet
radically.
points on the average person who drops $500 to $1,000 on their monitors?
Yep.
They're working out of a 10-foot by 12-foot bedroom on a regular table, or maybe even a nice, studio desk, like the output desk is a
Yep.
pretty nice one. What are the 3, 4, 5 things, the rules, the bullet points that they should follow?
Well, I don't know the rules, but one is generally if you can actually physically get your speakers off of a desk helps. I mean,
Right.
This one, you've got such a deep desk here that doesn't make as much sense, but on stands behind where you work. So mine are completely disconnected, because what happens if things are sitting on a table,
Yeah.
even just like, and some phone books, that low energy goes down and actually starts resonating.
Personal transmission, right?
This turns into a giant speaker.
Yeah.
Also, when it's right there, I mean,
I'm only laughing because up until when I got these really nice stands,
yes,
my speakers were on Robin Frederick's books.
yes,
I get it.
and I sadly just spent $1,300 or $1,400 on a pair of stands for my new high-end mastering speakers.
Wow.
But we've all done it too. That the meter bridge of the console.
Yeah.
We've all mixed a million records that way, and some of them turned out pretty darn good. But right there, you've got that large surface just reflecting sounds, which is creating weird phase interactions. But in terms of but I'm digressing. Let's get back to home studio people.
Right.
What can you do? One is generally if you can put them on stands versus on the table you're working on.
And they don't have to be $1,300.
No,
The
that's
ones that we're
ridiculous.
looking at here, I'm not going to move my camera. It'll screw up my green screen. But these are shaped like the letter C, but flat on top and bottom with a slight angle. So the speakers are slightly towed down, and I angled them in. I haven't done the measurement because I can't put them where they need to be, because I wouldn't be able to see people sitting at my desk. However, these were, I want to say, like $125 for the pair, and they're built like a tank.
Yeah.
And they've got nice rubber isolators underneath and underneath the monitors.
Speaking of isolators, there's not too much, I don't make any money, but there's a company called Acoustics.
Oh, yeah.
And they make these basically absorbers that are like $65 to $100 or so. Amazing.
Yeah.
And again, I have no vested interest in anybody caring, but it's one of those things like for $100 where, not always, because I've tested them in a lot of rooms, and sometimes like, maybe, but there's others where it's night and day.
Yeah.
Like the trends, the change in terms of improvement of clarity and detail and width is just jaw dropping. And there's some others too where that's been pretty good, but the Acoustic ones for like $100, like huge transformation.
Yeah.
Especially in a situation where you maybe do have to be on a table where you're going to have that kind of transmission. So, but the one thing too is experiment with placement.
Right.
That's a huge thing.
Height, by the way.
Height.
So many people don't think about having things at ear level, number one. And number two, if you'll notice, you guys can't see this, but I've got my woofers on the inside, because bass is usually a mono thing. You want it somewhat, it's a very non-directional thing, but you want it down the middle most of the time, and you want the stereo spread and the imaging on the outside. So woofers in the middle, tweeters on the outside, and it breaks my heart when I see people take a pair, even though I've got my NS10 set up like that here, where you stand them up on end, like two shoeboxes standing on their end, and they're not anywhere near the height of your ears.
Yep.
It's like, they're going to sound like this.
So there's two things, and one to be in total agreement.
Yeah.
But it's always kind of like I'll see people like just have the speakers sitting on their desk and like maybe this is a good bass frequency absorber here, but it's like even if it is buy Robin Frederick's books. Obviously, they make for great speaker stands. So buy a bunch of her books.
Sorry, Robin.
No, but No, but height is really important. But the one thing I'd say in terms of where that height is, and also orientation of the tweeters,
Yeah.
check the manufacturer's guidance on that. Because sometimes, especially when you get into the little bit higher end stuff,
Right.
a lot of times they wear those being inside or outside or oriented this way.
Right.
Sometimes they've designed it in a particular way where, the tweeter is offset against the woofer or vice versa.
Right.
To do that.
They've done actual physical phase relationship
yeah.
stuff in the way they built the cabinet.
Like the new speakers I just got this week, and they're amazing, but a company called ATC, which, just about the best speaker manufacturer in the world, but their guidance is to orient their height based on the mid-range driver. And you, we come from a lot of the same stuff. Like, no, you orient ear towards tweeter. That's just the way God intended it. It's where it's always been. But their guidance is very specific on theirs to base it on the mid-range driver. So for me, that's a difference of like this. So the tweeters are actually above my head, which again, just visually is freaking me out a little because I've always been aligned by tweeter.
And do the tweeters literally shoot over your head, or are they angled down a little? Or?
Yeah, well, ATCs have a fairly wide sweet spot on them, but they've kind of oriented them in a way with the expectation that that sound, because of its being a little higher, will arrive closer to time aligned with the mid-range driver. And truth is, I've been going up and down, and they sound pretty damn good either way. But
speaking of time aligns, remember the Yuri 813 time aligned monitors? That was like revolutionary when they came out.
Yeah, but that's one thing. But check with guidance on that. But that placement in terms of height, but it's stunning the difference of, again, and I've been spending the last 2 weeks like running analysis, like sweeps. Whoop, whoop. So I actually have graphs that are telling me what's going on, and a mixing of that in my ears. But it's amazing how much moving your speakers back 6 inches can completely transform, the linearity of the low end.
So if you were building a home studio in a 10 by 12 bedroom made out of sheetrock with no acoustic treatment yet, what would you reflexively offer up as $500 to $1,000 pair of monitors for people who aren't you?
For people who aren't me.
Yeah. Not audio freaks.
Well, one thing is look around on the used market.
Yeah.
If you're in a big enough town or something where you can look around on the used market, and it's really tough. The one thing I like about ATC, which are stupidly expensive, is like, okay, nice new car or ATC speakers.
Wow.
But so many of the different lines are. Some of them personally are really good, and others are like, how can the same company have made that garbage?
Right.
And this one, and room interaction is a big one. So in your perfect case scenario is like, hey, I've got a buddy who's selling some stuff. Hey, can we bring him over and try him in my room? That's sort of the best way to go. So
don't buy it because it's got a yellow speaker cone. It looks cool, and you see it in pictures all the time in audio magazines.
But KRK is a perfect example. I've got KRK V8 Mark IIs.
Okay.
You can actually see them on that one of the pictures you posted. I've got them somewhere else now, but I think they're like $250 on the used market or less, and in the right room they're outstanding.
Are they in this shot?
Yeah, sitting on top of the big ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, they're there.
Yellow speaker cones.
Yeah,
but KRK
good branding.
But KRK makes other speakers I think sound like garbage, and these KRKs in some rooms I've tried them on. If somebody told me they were $7,000 speakers, I'd believe it in a second.
Wow. And
other rooms are like, there's not that great. There's a new company called Kali, which is doing some. I've worked in a couple rooms that have those.
How do you spell it?
KALI.
Okay.
And that's a brand that's pretty good. The JBL released a series a while back.
Right.
And LS305, their first generation was incredible.
Yeah, I heard them in the JBL listening room in Northridge.
Yeah.
Blown away, because the last time I was serious about JBLs, they were making 4311s in 1975 or something. And they were really mid-range. They were a good workhorse. Yeah. They preceded the NS10 as the classic, everybody's got a pair. And then I heard these things. They were like they had a 5-inch and a 7-inch version of them. And they had like a little plastic horn in the top of them. I literally said, turn off the music, you guys. This is like a home run. They're like, really? You like them? I said, yeah, they sound amazing. They were not expensive.
And then they did the V2, which is like a big downgrade from that. Like, I always get so nervous when somebody, especially these companies who put something good at a great price point.
Yeah.
And I wish I could remember exactly what they're calling it. But it's JBL's kind of prosumer range.
Yeah.
But the first generations are great. I actually put a bunch of my consulting clients like, here, get these.
Yeah.
And
they weren't much money.
No.
They were like remarkably cheap for what
yeah.
they
So
were.
like for like the version with like an 8-inch driver was like $400, under $500. And, you know, even some of my clients where I work remotely, I was like, if we're going to work in your studio for this part of it, you need to get something else in here. So here, buy these. You know, that's what I had Guar put that in their studio when I was working with them. But
I'm going to Google it really quick.
But then they did the V2s, and like, I didn't really.
JBL studio monitors.
Yeah. I didn't like the new ones, and now they're on V3, which I haven't heard at all. But the first generation, you know, you can find those, especially like the 8-inch driver version, are really good. Might be the LS something. Or
I'm not seeing it, but why I am seeing stuff that I haven't seen. JBL L52, basically like first cousin to the 4311s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
not
anyway.
going to geek out on that stuff, but I'll go home tonight. Some people look at porn. I look at speakers.
And to some people, it's the same thing.
Right.
But the one thing that I will say is, and this is kind of weird, but it's weird how personal speaker choice is.
Yeah.
In ways that it shouldn't be. I mean, because you should think, especially when you're kind of professional, okay, this is telling me what I need to know. This feels linear in the low end. I'm getting the detail, stereo enriching. But there are speakers, and I won't bother sort of bashing brands, but like there's one brand that's like really popular, and producers, engineers that make records, like I really admire them. Like, you work on those? How? Like, and I'll work on them for like 10 minutes, and like, this just has to go. We need to get these off of the console bridge.
And it's not a matter of personal taste?
No, it is a matter of personal taste.
But
It's weird.
It works for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are like literally, and where I had a friend of mine's one of the top kind of guys for mixing video game music and some film scores and stuff. And we were building out his new studio, and I was kind of helping him with that. And he pretty much had, their budget wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
It was just like, we're putting in the absolute best speakers we can here. And so, and when you're, a bunch of zeros after it, all companies are very happy. Yes, we'll happily drive over and bring these speakers to your studio so you can play with them. So all the big brands, and there were some things where it was like we'd put them on and going, wow, these are like $12,000, and I wouldn't keep them if the company gave them to me.
Wow.
And then there's other things where, again, there'll be a speaker that's like $800, like, oh, I could work on this all day.
Yeah.
And so it's a speaker choice is a really weird thing. So, I wish there was an easy, like if you said, hey, what's a good mic for recording guitars for beginners? Like, get a 57 and shut up.
Right.
Okay,
well, let me take it a step further, which is a lot of people live in apartments and they can't piss off their neighbor.
Yep.
Especially a lot of people in our world tend to work from like 8 p.m. until midnight because
absolutely.
That's, the family's
Absolutely.
going to bed,
Yeah.
and this is when you get your alone time to go be a studio person. Mixing on headphones, something that I never did back when I was a professional, back in the old days. But as I mentioned to you a couple of years ago, right before COVID, I put Logic on this laptop just to play around with it because I'd never worked on a DAW in my life. And eventually I got Waves NX, here I can tell you. I think I wrote it, the Ocean Way Room Simulator.
Yep.
And I did it because it's like, okay, it's like $30-ish
Yeah.
if it sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to cry about it. I was really impressed with it. I use like $250 headphones. I think they're Audio Technica MX50s. They were on the list of recommended headphones to use with it. It's mind-blowingly... you turn your head to the left, but when you really know, being a retired engineer, look, when you sit at a console and you look down at the faders, it sounds differently than when you're looking at the monitors.
Yep.
People don't think about that until you do it for a living. Wearing the AT whatever 50s and using that room simulator it's mind-blowingly realistic, and it makes it harder to mix because you've got the interaction of the room.
Yeah.
But the end product sounds good because you worked hard to make the mix work like you're in an actual control room. How do you feel about mixing on headphones in general? Have you ever done it? Would you do it? Which headphones would you use?
Yeah. So I think you make music any way you can make music. Okay. So like that same thing, you live in an apartment and you work from 8 to midnight, or you live in a house and your kids are trying to get to sleep. There's plenty of reasons why you can't. Or you've negotiated with the rest of the family that you get this broom closet to do your music, and there's no speakers
under the stairs for you, Harry Potter.
Yeah, and there's no speakers in the world that are going to make that broom closet sound good.
Right.
So in the modern world, it's totally rational and realistic to need to rely on headphones a bunch. And it's totally feasible and totally doable. And what made me even more of a convert, again, and I prefer working on speakers. I mean, it works for me also. I just don't want these things on my head, necessarily for 10 hours a day, 7 days a week or something like that. But, I'm over in Italy a lot, and I don't have my own studio built up there.
Really?
And
I'm shocked.
Yeah, not yet.
Wow.
But I've got studios I can work out of. But there's still some stuff you got to get done. And so I have a really good set. I think they're called Shure 1840s.
Okay.
So, but
headphones.
they're not esoteric. They're $500 or $600. They're not the $3,000 or anything. But and I'm like, well, I got to try this out. And so I doing some work for a client who I've done a bunch of stuff before, and it's great work, and I like the client a bunch, but he's pretty darn picky.
Yeah.
So I'm usually getting these revision notes about this and the vocal this and blah blah blah, and like, all right, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm going to do this on headphones, and I'm just going to send it off and see how it goes. And I did the whole mix on headphones, sent it off, didn't mention anything to him. And he's like, this is great, fantastic, I love it. Listen to the car everywhere, it's perfect, it's amazing. Wow. He said, but at the very end, there's a second harmony vocal. Could that be a little more prominent?
No problem.
And I'm like, okay. So I had mixed the other stuff that we had all the revisions in my full blown out studio and everything. So I realized it can absolutely happen. So my whole thing, I can't speak against them at all, like in terms of that Waves program, or Slate's got a whole program.
Which I've heard great things
virtual
about.
Things. I mean, I'm curious about those. I'll try anything, but I don't think you need any of that stuff.
Right.
Because for me, the reality is, get a good set of headphones.
Get to know them.
Get to know them. That's exactly correct. And when I'm working on headphones, there's no part of me that's going, oh God, I wish I had some weird phase stuff going on between to try and fool me that I'm sitting in front of speakers. I don't really care. I care that, oh yeah, I'm listening to this. Yep. Relationship to things I know. I know how bright my guitar is. I know how forward the vocal feels compared to the kick drum and the bass. So there's no part of me that feels that I'm missing any of those things. Again, I don't want to dismiss them because I haven't used them.
The difference that I found was in the bottom end. When you're listening, whatever, I can't remember, MX50s, I think is what I've got from Audio-Technica. And I was doing a mix of the Eagles' Take It Easy. I've got a session of that. And the bottom end, because it's so close to your head, it's right there, that it sounds better than it should, and it wasn't accurate when I listened to it in the car the next day. It wasn't even close. So then I went back and did another mix from scratch using the room simulator, and I realized, wow, this sounds so much like a real control room, and you can kind of feel the bass even though you're in headphones. And so for that reason alone, I found it to be a very practical tool. As far as getting delays right and reverb tails and stuff, better without.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the interaction of the room.
Yeah.
So you really hear, it's like at a microscopic level.
And one thing that a lot of people can do is sort of, they work, 8 to midnight, those kind of things, is one of the things you can get it pretty darn close. And, and then the next day, especially if you're not on a label deadline or a tag,
Right.
like you got to get this
Yeah,
listing
wait for
in
the
by
kids to
9
go
a.m.
to school and your wife to
Boom.
drive them there and
Because
then
a lot
go
of
crank
times
it up.
you can go and even crank it up. Because a lot of times I even like different scenario, but I'm working like on an S10s or something mixing.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go, okay, put it up on the big speakers, like even just for like 10 okay, that's what's going on. I got to fix that.
Yeah.
So and one of the things too, are, when I do like Atmos stuff, I'll build the Atmos on headphones and then just go into, a big Atmos room and just check everything. Okay, yeah. Tweak that a little bit. Okay, good.
We need to do a show about Atmos. Not today because it's too big of a subject.
Yeah. And then I'll get cranky and then,
Yeah. I've got my own opinions, and recently I saw somebody that expressed nearly identical opinions.
I think I know the video you're talking about.
I was at the Atmos demo when they rolled it out in LA and they rented the movie theater, and Giles Martin was there and got up and gave the speech and everything. First couple of songs, it was listening to Sgt. Pepper in a blacked out movie theater. And at first it's like, yeah, okay, it's surround sound. And then by the third or fourth song, you felt like Paul's fingers were 6 inches in front of your nose as he's playing bass. You could literally like hear the fingerprints on the strings. So it was impressive in a technical way, but there were things about it that I didn't love. But that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
Let's see. Boy, we've covered a lot of this.
Well, we
stuff
had about
already.
500 questions come in too. In case
Yeah, so
people
let's do questions because, we got a half an hour. Let's do questions. Hello, everybody in the chat room. Okay, so if you want us to take your question, we will do our best to get as many as we possibly can. Please type the word question in all caps so it makes it easy to go, oh, there's a question.
Do music libraries like recordings in surround sound? You're much more tapped into that, but I haven't been seeing those requests. For the most part, it seems that most of the time, people want control of that at the dub stage.
Yeah.
But they would even like Atmos, the top music mixers for scores aren't delivering. They might deliver in surround, but not Atmos. And especially if you have stems, it's usually the dub stage wants that control.
And now you can create AI stems using AI, which I've seen some really impressive demonstrations. So yeah, the answer to that, Stu, is I have not heard one person from, and I know a lot of library people, I've not had one person even say surround or Atmos. Not once in all these years to me. So I can't imagine. All right. No questions coming in with the word question in front of them.
Oh, they have to have the word question.
Well, I just there is a little
Okay.
delay going up. Oh yeah, I should have included your bio at the top of the show. Sorry, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Well, by now we probably have questions at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Are you familiar with the Stephen Slate? That's one I talked about.
Right.
I'm very familiar with it. I haven't used it yet. And this is more important stuff. Did the mountain dulcimer? Some of them did, some of them didn't. One got repaired. So it was a mix of loss, survival, and a good luthier being able to repair one of them. Oh, question. Subwoofer needed for 5 or 6 inch monitors, yes or no? That's a really, really good question.
I'm curious to see what you're going to say.
Yes, but you want a subwoofer on a switch, on a foot switch. Most subwoofers will let you put it on a foot switch. You need to be really careful because, something 5 or 6, there's deep sub stuff that's just not being represented. So, but you need to be really careful with placement and how you integrate the subwoofer. You can't just drop it in and go, hey, it's done, da-da-da.
I've seen people have subs underneath a table all the way to the right side up against a wall. And I guess, okay, so what does it take? Like an E note on a bass is a 33-foot wave or something like that. It takes a really long time to develop. So placement is not specific like you would get with very directional high-end stuff. But what is your opinion on placement of subwoofers? Do you go, in a perfect world, do you go center of your monitors?
You generally don't want to be center of your monitors because that makes you center of the room. The general guidance is a little bit offset.
Okay.
So most of the part, your subs are dealing with 80 hertz down.
Right.
which are very omnidirectional. So they're not going to locate as well. So you've got a little more play. Some of the traditional theory is if you drop it right in the center, there is more likely to be interaction left and right. So if you have
acoustic interaction from the walls,
so
you could get cancellation.
So if you have it offset a little bit, that's going to be a little bit more diverse.
I learned something new today. Yay.
But also just in terms of aligning directly with your speakers, or
as
a little
far
bit
as
back,
the frontal plane,
inverted, yes, and potentially inverting the phase on them.
Right.
So I'm not discouraging. People should get into it and geek around, but don't go, oh, the subwoofer's there, okay, it's done. But try moving it forward, moving it back over onto the sides, because it will change it. And generally what I'm looking for, whether it's my own room I'm putting together or consulting with somebody, is, you kind of want to sneak as little in as you can. Like if your subwoofer is fun, it's probably not helping you. It's one of those things where you want to sneak it in and go, oh, okay, I'm hearing that low sub stuff, the bottom of that kick drum, that, low rumble of a synth bass.
Yeah.
But if your subs are like, oh yeah, baby, like you want that for an action movie or something like that.
Right.
But where
not
you're
to
doing
make a record.
But where you're doing work, you don't. You just want, okay, here's enough to represent a little what's there.
How do you know? And then you would have to remain consistent with how much of the sub you're bringing into the monitor mix from project to project, because we always want home bass, or bass line.
Yeah.
So
what I think the best scenarios are, you've got the subwoofer, and with a lot of them you basically have output of your monitor controller or whatever, or your DAW interface going into the sub, and then the sub spits out to your main left and right. So they're all on the same volume control, which is really important because you don't want that balance changing.
Yeah.
And again, I just love having it on a foot switch to be able to turn it off to hear, okay, what people are going to have. But also, if you have a smaller room and other stuff, you're probably better off trying to do most of your work, like with just your 5 or your 6-inch speakers, and then turn it on just to see what's going on down there. Because
Brad Gray is actually kind of addressing this. My low end seems to be doing some cancellation. Monitors are on stands close to a wall with some dampening materials behind them. I'm 3 feet away, but on other speakers, the bass seems heavy. So that relates to what you were talking about, the subs with canceling its own thing because of the positioning of it and
but
the reflections.
Also, one thing traditionally, again, the best thing you can do is experiment with stuff. But as you move speakers closer to a back wall, they're going to create more low frequency energy.
Yeah.
And part of that too is it's not like, oh, it's now representing it better. With all this stuff, it's like creating these increases or decreases in energy.
Well, how do you know? I'm asking a question on their behalf. How do you know where the bass line is? Because yes, you can make it sound sexy or less sexy by where you do it. Like Tannoy gave me some near field monitors in like 1984.
Yeah,
they sounded so pretty.
Yep.
But you couldn't make a record on them because they just sounded too good.
So there's a big thing that I'm a huge advocate of. Is what I call having a North Star. Yeah. For me, and I'm sure I've talked about it before, but there's a song called "Ahead by a Century" by a Canadian group called the Tragically Hip.
Right, I remember this.
Like that is like tattooed on my heart.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that I love the song and I love the band, but I know exactly when the bass comes in on that. I know exactly how low it's supposed to go. I know exactly where that voice is in relationship to the guitars. I understand exactly how bright those cymbals should feel, because I've listened to it in studios all over the world for decades now. And so when I try on a new set of headphones or try speakers or try speaker placement, I'm putting that on and going, okay, yes, I know exactly where everything is supposed to be. So if that record sounds thin on the bottom, that record should not sound thin on the bottom. Like, okay, my speaker placement of these speakers aren't doing the low end justice. Or if that record sounds darker than I want or brighter and edgier, okay, now I know this is microphones or mic placement. And again, I do a lot of objective testing. I'm running tone sweeps and all of that, which is it can help you work faster to solve big problems. But reality is, again, invite a friend over. Hey, got some good craft beer, do you want to come over and share it with me? Great, I'd love to. while you're here, and I don't like beer, so I don't know why I use that example. But anyway, but it's the thing in your position, like if you have a buddy and like little blue tape, like if you go to my new studio now, there's blue tape all over the walls and the floor of measuring things out. But that kind of thing, okay, cool. All right, pull those speakers back 6 inches. Wow, the bass just got ridiculous there. Here, pull them back.
Yeah.
Here, push them forward a little bit. And just being able to do that, even without the objective analysis tools, you can go, oh man, the bass of my favorite records feels about right here. And it doesn't sound harsh, or the imaging is good. Because literally, again, this much, especially in a smaller room. And like one thing I'm wrestling with too is, even in my new room, is there's a spot where I really want the listening position to be, but it's not going to be there. Just because the room interaction is just, me moving forward 10 inches makes a huge difference in terms of my listening position.
Everybody who's got a home studio, do this. When we finish the show tonight, sit there, put your elbows, cross your arms, put your elbows down, lean in, lean back, look up at the ceiling, look down at your wrist, and you will be shocked at how much difference there is. All right, couple new questions. Hey, Ronan, thanks for all your great advice. Can you recommend a great YouTube channel focused on mixing and production of pop music? That's from Smudgy.
Hey, Smudgy. I don't, honestly. I haven't been keeping up, so I wish there was a good answer to that, but I don't have one. But the one right below it, from Brian.
Okay.
Do you compare your mix with reference music from other artists often or not? You just started talking about it while I was typing. Sorry, slow typist. But the one thing I'll say is absolutely. But it depends. I mean, there's some days where I walk into the studio, I fire things up, and I'm like, I'm a badass. I'm really good at this. I mean, but I don't mean that in a cocky way, but I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm good at what I do. And I feel really confident, so I'll mix away, and that's all good. There's other days where I walk into the studio and go, I'm a fraud. God, I hope nobody figures out.
Imposter syndrome.
But also where I'm feeling really unsure about myself. Like, man, am I being ridiculous with the low end? Or there's that.
I don't think a lot of people who aren't studio professionals really understand how important getting low end right. Kick and bass relationships. I hear so many pop records today that just don't get it right. They'll put 10 layers of whatever kick drum in there, 808s probably, and yet they don't get the relationship between. So I don't. Yeah. But we're just fanatical old guys.
Exactly. But the way that I kind of work, I mix back into I work in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
But this would be the same with Logic or Studio One. I mix back into the session into a new stereo track.
Okay.
And that's whether I'm working completely in the box or on an analog console.
And why do you do that?
And so one is I've got the mix right in there with the session.
Okay.
There's two things. One, I've got it right in there with the session. Two, I can also go in and punch mix changes. Like, this is perfect except that bridge. I turn the tambourine down too much.
Why wouldn't you just automate?
Well, no, but like even, but I could, but I print back in real time, especially if the hard. So like if I go, oh man, on the bridge, the tambourine got turned down too much.
Yeah.
Let me turn it back up. I can just go in and punch the bridge. So in 30 seconds, good. Okay,
that's
consolidate.
So
it's done.
I've never, and I'm sure you're not the only guy that does that, but that's cool.
But here's the other thing. I can pull other mixes I know really well into the session. And so, because, all my tracks are going out wherever they go out, individual tracks, and then back in, and then my mix is going out. That's my main stereo out to my monitors.
Right.
I can pull in on another track some other mixes I love from my favorite artists. And it's amazing, too, because one thing, again, we humans are incredible. We can acclimate. People who live in North Alaska can get used to summer being cold or, frigid or hot temperatures, or people in prison camps kind of get used to, well, this is what life is. I mean, it's amazing. And so we acclimate.
My speakers gave me Stockholm syndrome.
Exactly. But it's that thing where if we're mixing something all day and we're just thinking, oh, God, this is amazing. Where am I going to put the Grammy Award for this? But maybe we're completely off, but we will acclimate to stuff.
Right.
And it's amazing how much, like if I've been slaving away on a difficult mix all day, and I might think it sounds great, and then I'll go over, literally spend 5 seconds listening to another mix I know really well going, I'm not even close. Because I've acclimated, my mix, blah, blah, blah. That's become my new normal.
Right.
And in 5 seconds of going, listen to another mix, oh, my high end is way off, or my high end is too bright, or whatever.
I'm a failure.
Yes. But it's amazing how, again, I've got a few mixes that I know really well, and I can just go over and like 4 seconds of that one, 4 seconds of that one, 4 seconds.
Right.
Okay, that's where I am.
Steely Dan Asia, that's my North Star.
Yeah. And so it's amazing. So a lot of times I'm not going back to make sure my mix is like somebody else's, but to really understand where I am. But also true is there are times where I am, I know that an artist or a label like is chasing somebody else's record. So I want to make sure that, oh yeah, my drums are as big or.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There was a question before. This is from Piano Guitar Voice. Ronan, do you know that Tune Track, the books? Mm-hmm. Thank you. The Tune Track just released precision-based software. I have it, and I have to say, oh my, and what do you think of the real precision bass? I am curious, and I do have to give books away in a minute.
Okay.
But what do you think about P basses?
Lovely.
Yeah.
It's easy. You plug them, you even plug them into a direct DI, like a good quality DI, and like, well, that's usable. Let's get to mixing this record.
I prefer jazz basses.
I don't have, that's one thing I don't have a strong dogmatic thing on, but
there are a couple of things in my life as back when I was still an engineer. LA3s, everybody laughed at me. They're too simple. Any idiot can operate it, yes, and they sound great, which is more important. And I always kept a jazz bass every studio I worked at because I just thought they sounded better than a P bass, and nobody ever agreed with me.
Yeah, and if you didn't catch what he said, he talked about LA3, which is the solid state version of the LA2A.
Right.
There are lots of plug-in emulations, but also different ones. They'll call them Opto.
Right.
And again, I love them. I've got plugins and hardware, and even when I buy new compressors, I'm like, ooh, let's try this new Opto.
Yeah.
And that the Opto electrical, it just is how the compression is done technically. But they're so great. It's like, here's a knob for more compression or less compression.
And here's the output.
It's stunning, amazing on bass, great on vocals. I use them all
Acoustic
the
guitars, lead guitars, everything.
Yeah,
and all my friends back in the 70s and 80s laughed at me, and now they're like them. Thousands of dollars.
And that would probably be one of the, like, if I had to get rid of my bunch of hardware, that'd be one of the things. I own a couple different ones that I would keep and won't get too techy, but they basically have variable release time. So it's hard. They sound pretty smooth no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So I love them. But even if you don't have the hardware,
I'm so happy that you love them.
Yeah, look at your plug-in options, and you'll see them called Opto compressors.
I've got the CLA, the Wave CLAs, and they sound 98% as good and pretty true reproduction of the hardware version.
Yeah, the Opto.
Yeah, just
plugins
spend $35, get it, you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Or send it back to me in a box, and I'll refund your money. All right, let's give away a couple of books, then we'll get in a couple more questions. So how we're going to do this, and don't jump the gun because first person never wins because nobody's going to do it now. You're going to type in a +1, and then Liz, who's sitting, 50 feet away in the conference room, or no, she's not in the conference room anymore. Liz has moved offices. She's going to go like this and go bink and pick out a person, and then we are going to send a copy of, hey, that's my song by Tracy and Vance Marino.
I think I'm in that book.
Yeah?
Vance and Tracy are amazing. They're such cool people, and they are so successful. Like, they're just so good at what they do.
They work hard.
Yeah, they work hard. They're really smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're we have this book at home. They're amazing people to learn from.
Anyway, okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Somebody win the book. It's unbelievably comprehensive.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you ever get a chance to hear them speak at a conference like the Rally or anything, go, because they're really, really cool people, and very, very informed.
And really friggin' tall. They're, well, not to you. You're the only guy.
They are pretty tall people, yes.
Yeah, they're like 6'3"-ish. I'm looking to see if I can find you. But I, on the other hand, don't think I'm in here. Maybe I'm wrong. That's okay, Tracy and Vance. Doesn't bother me. Not even a little bit.
Bought the book, The Road Rally. Good.
It is an incredibly comprehensive book, as is the next one that I'm going to give away. Look at those plus ones rolling in.
There you go.
Okay, and Liz will be typing in the winner here shortly. And then we'll do the next drawing, take a couple more questions. Oh, it's cool. I'm seeing some names in the chat room that I've never seen before. Nelson Ortiz, you are the big winner. Yeah. Awesome. Congratulations, Nelson. Send an email to Liz, L-I-Z, at taxi.com and give her your address. And we will get this book sent out to you. You should have it in your hands in like a week. All right. And the next one, ladies and gentlemen, Writing Production Music for TV by Steve Barden. Another classic, a great book, unbelievably comprehensive. And I love this picture of Steve. He's been using it for like 10 years or more and everything. He looks so serious and badass. One of the sweetest, nicest guys you'll ever meet. See, that's what he looks like in real life right there. Anyway, I love this book. I love it. That's all I can tell you. So, all right, next book. Are you ready? Let's do +2 this time. Let's mix it up. Feeling dangerous. All right, 1, 2, 3, go. I feel like we need game show music.
I was just singing the same. Ding, 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 ding.
Now we have to pay royalties, damn it.
Ding, ding, ding. I changed it up at the end. Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, now you sound like, who was the guy, Dinka-Dinka-Doo, Jimmy?
Jimmy Durante.
Yeah.
Get it.
Hey, you're
Just
not as
enough
old
to-
as me, and you know Jimmy Durante. That's impressive.
I stopped before you'd have to pay any royalties.
By the way, while you guys are voting, I want to plug something. Yes, I got free product, and I'm going to plug it on the show. Where did I put it? All right. One of our members, named Adam Monticelli, from Wayne, Nebraska, he and his wife started a popcorn company out of their house, and it's taken off and become quite successful. And a few times a year, they send us a box, like a 2-foot by 2-foot box filled with flavored popcorn. This is my favorite popcorn I've ever eaten in my life, loaded baked potato.
How could one not?
Yeah, it's so good. So I just want to say, where is it? Where's the website? Aquapop.com, I believe, is the website. Seriously, check this out. Order some of their popcorn, and you will see why I love it. I'm not just plugging it because Adam so nicely sends us free popcorn a couple times a year. And our winner for Steve Barden's wonderful book is none other than Steve LaLosa. What?
Peter.
How do you say that name? Whoops. Peter Liosa? I'm hoping. Anyway, Peter, congratulations. You will love this book. Send an email to liz@taxi.com. Give her your phone number, your address, and your email, and we will send you out a copy of this book. Congratulations to both winners, and congratulations to Adam and his wife at Aquapop for making incredibly good popcorn that I'm plugging because they send me free stuff. But if it wasn't so good, I wouldn't plug it, nor would I eat it. I would just politely give it to the squirrels in my backyard. It really is that good. And I'm not like a big popcorn lover, and I love it. All right, couple more questions, and I've got to go to a wedding in 7 minutes. I'm already late.
All right, make them good questions.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question for Ronan. What do you think of the Townsend Sphere microphone modeling system?
Okay.
It did win a TAC award or Tech Award.
Tech Award.
Yeah. And gets great reviews on Sweetwater. What do you think of the Luna DAW? Well, let's just stick with the first one, the Sphere.
Yeah. So,
Townsend Sphere microphone, modeling microphone.
I just don't want to talk about this one in particular.
Okay.
But I'm generally not drawn to modeling, just as a general thing.
I don't think you're thin enough for modeling personally.
I've been trying to I'm working on it a little bit, but in terms of kind of there's microphone modelers and there's like different amp modelers, and I'm generally more of a fan of getting a good mic that kind of does its thing.
Yeah.
Getting a guitar amp that does its thing, because all those things are really flexible. Like if you've got a Shure SM57 and a good large diaphragm condenser,
you can record anything.
Yeah. And you can do so much with just mic placement and changing how hard you drive the preamp and things. So there's not a part of me that kind of gets compelled to go, oh, I need to be able to just scroll through this mic, this mic, this mic. And also part of it too is there's no way that these modeling systems, they might create, oh, that's a sound that I like and works in my production.
Yeah.
But they can't account for off-axis response. They can't account for
the room
for proximity effect. There's all those kinds of things. So again, I don't say any of that with personal use of that product, but there's not a part of me that's compelled to go, oh, I need to have all of these things. And
I came up with a great thing for amp modelers today. We were having a discussion earlier. I was talking to Tom, who's our head of A&R on staff, and he's a guitar player and a bass player and works in a couple of live bands. And I said, bands no longer bring amps to gigs. They'll bring a modeler and just run it through the PA, but they want to have the wall of amps behind them. So I came up with the idea of inflatable amps. That way you don't have to bust your ass carrying it to the gig. You just blow them up. Look at my Marshalls. All right, one more question, then I got to go to a wedding.
Okay.
Yeah, Libby, I'm going to a wedding.
And Pat Wara is saying the mic sounds fantastic on its own, and they do account for that. There's no way you can really account for off-axis response.
Here's a question from Sam Warren.
Oh, Sam's awesome.
Probably too long for the end, but when recording bass, do you always record DI in addition to the mic signal? You and I could do 90 minutes.
But I could go really quick.
Yeah.
It's more common for me to take only a DI.
Right.
Sometimes only an amp too, but I'm a huge fan of a microphone on a guitar amp. Huge fan. But bass with a decent quality DI and something like radial. It doesn't have to be esoteric.
Right.
But a good bass in. And again, I'm not a fan of amp modeling for guitars, but some of the amp modelers for bass are really good. And I'll use them.
What is your favorite DI?
I mean, I've got a weird esoteric collection.
Okay.
But the one.
What about affordable stuff?
But
do you have one?
Like for affordable, like, hey, I'm in the $200 ballpark.
Yeah.
I think Radial is a great company.
Okay.
Their stuff is super solid. I use a lot something from a company called A Designs. They've got one called the Ready.
Yeah.
Which is a tube DI, which is $500 or $600 kind of range. But like those I use a whole bunch. But actually, I also love combining many times like a Sansamp bass driver.
Yeah.
I don't like on its own, but I'll actually split the signal off and take something like a clean radial. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll take something clean like, I did record I did a little while ago, but this band Guar will take like a clean, it's been radial DIs for all of those for just a very clean articulate sound.
Yeah.
And then something else like overdriving, the output of a vintage bass head or something like that. So we've got the clarity and detail with the good clean one, and then just an over the top. And the one perk about if you end up doing these things where that never goes out to an amp, and I love certain sound bass sounds, amp on a mic on an amp is like you're not going to do better.
Yeah.
But for lots of the other ones, if you combine these, like splitting off to a bass driver and a clean DI, or even say doubling, like multing a track and sending it out to a bass amp modeler, you can have all that flexibility without the phase issues you have to deal with if you're using a regular DI and miking an amp.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I personally always end up using the DI. At one point in my life, I worked in a studio for 5 years that had one of Jerry Garcia's old Ampeg bass amps.
Yeah.
Bought it in an auction somewhere. Sounded great, but it didn't sound great combining it with the DI because you had phase issues.
Yeah.
And trying the amp versus the DI, even though it was Jerry Garcia's Ampeg bass amp, DI always sounded better.
And then on the short 20 seconds. There are certain players where what they do with the amp is part of the, Motorhead.
Right.
That's about the amp. You think of a guy like Les Claypool from Primus, where that's super juiced up top of it. So you need to make sure that if the amp sound is truly a part of the identity of the artist, that you make sure to capture that, because a lot of times you can't recreate that with options after the fact.
Truer words never spoken. You guys, it was great seeing you again today. I will be back next week with another live episode with Bobby Borg, none other than Bobby the Borg. And we're going to talk about some musician finance stuff, a topic I don't believe we have ever done on Taxi TV. So very excited about that. Ronan, great to see you,
awesome,
man. I am so glad you didn't get squished.
Me too. That's kind of a positive. Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who weren't around the early part of the show, go back and watch it to see the before and after shots of Ronan and Liz's house/studio that got wiped out by a 160-foot tree. And 4 minutes earlier, he was sitting right where that tree hit. Anyway, great to see you.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to write in your book. Keep November 2nd through the 5th open. The road rally coming right up.
I will. As long as you invite me, I will never miss it.
You're already invited.
Yeah. I travel back from other parts of the world to be at it. It's the one thing that I will not miss every year.
Thank you. I love having you, and somebody who imitates a fair amount of things that Taxi does, a little competitor, just held his own small event on Century Boulevard. And he's like this revelation of like, it was so cool having 100 people in a room together from all these different states, the vibe and the love and the hugs and everything. It's like, dude, we invented that 27 years ago. We invented love at the Road Rally. Anyway, and you are part of that, my friend.
Awesome.
It's people feel like your family because they come and they see you there every year. So thank you again. See you guys next week for another exciting episode of Taxi. Oh, don't forget, hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber. Give us a thumbs up so that YouTube's algorithm absolutely loves us, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Fade.